So we'll get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Building Better Reading Experiences in FE Colleges with Talis Aspire. I'm Juan Veloso-Borgin, Marketing Manager at Cortex. Next slide, please, Rob. Today, I'm joined by Rob Moore, our Development Manager, and also Helen Harpin, a Library Coordinator at Newcastle College. Just before we start, some quick housekeeping rules. If you have any audio or visual issues, please rejoin the Teams webinar. We encourage you to connect with each other in the chat, and if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and then we'll answer them live at the end of the webinar. And lastly, this webinar is recorded and we'll send it to you after the webinar. Next slide, please, Rob. So in today's webinar, we'll be covering essentially what is a reading list management system. Then we'll have a look at Helen's story and what Newcastle College's experience has been with Talis Aspire. And lastly, we'll have an introduction to Talis Aspire with Rob. With that said, over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Juan. Appreciate that. Hi everyone, welcome. My name's Rob Moore. I'm one of the development managers working on Talis Aspire for Cortex. I didn't put a slide in about this, but I do usually start at the moment with an explanation about the transfer of ownership of Talis Aspire and that kind of thing. Because it's still fairly recent history, kind of as of October last year. So lots of you may be familiar with Talis Aspire. It was previously owned by Sage, the publisher, and has now moved to be owned by Cortex, who some of you may be familiar with. So that has happened as of October last year. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the kind of product itself. Talis Aspire remains, as it is, a kind of independent reading list management system. But yeah, that's just to say, obviously that's kind of recent history with us. So just to explain what's going on there. I'm going to do a couple of slides about reading list management systems, what they are and what Talis Aspire is. And then I'm going to hand over to Helen to talk through her experiences. So I thought I'd kind of start with what is a reading list management system, I think, because not all of you may be aware. Some of you may use them, some of you may not. We're going to do a poll on that in a second. But a reading list management system, or often abbreviated to RLMS, it's basically a bit of software that's used in universities and increasingly in colleges to create, organize and share and manage course resources. I guess the kind of older name for it really would be a reading list management system, but really we're talking about lists of resources much more than we are lists of readings these days, because previously it may well have been kind of limited slightly to kind of books, journals, but these days really there's all sorts you can put into a reading list. So you can obviously audio visual content, links to YouTube videos, sound files, picture files, if you're thinking more of kind of arts and graphics types courses. So there's lots and lots of things that can go onto a list these days and do go onto a list. So it's not necessarily true just to say it's just reading these days. It's lots of other things. And what does it do? I mean, it connects essentially the three kind of groups of users that we kind of connect are the academic staff, so the teaching staff, obviously, the students themselves, and then the library. Obviously today I imagine we're mainly speaking to librarians, but those are kind of the three groups that we kind of serve with reading list management systems, and we hope to ensure that everyone has easy and legal access to the right learning materials. I'll take a brief pause at this point, and hopefully Juan is going to activate this poll. So just a quick poll to see who actually has or uses a reading list system at the moment. It should come up in your screen. Hopefully it does. It's just to give me an idea of who we're talking to, whether people use one or not. See the responses coming through. We've had about 9 responses so far. it's skewing towards no at the moment. So people don't use one, which is really useful information for me. So I think I started at the right point in explaining what it is. We'll move on to the next slide now, but yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, it sounds like the majority of people here don't actually use one at the moment, which is probably what I was expecting, talking kind of large NFE audience. So what's Talis Aspire? Well, Talis Aspire, I mean, it's an online reading list management system, so obviously it functions fully online. It integrates with lots of things, but primarily your library catalogue is one of the big things it integrates with. And hopefully it streamlines course resourcing, so acquisitions, telling the library what it is they need to get. Copyright compliance, which we're not going to talk too much about today, in acquisitions. So yeah, as I said on the previous slide, we connect the faculty, the students and the library to make sure that everyone has, or the students have access to the content they need as prescribed by the faculty. But ultimately, it keeps the library at the heart of teaching and learning. That is the idea with Talis Aspire. That is all I'm going to say at the start of this webinar. We'll come back to some more kind of Aspire specific stuff at the end. But I am now going to hand over to Helen, and she's going to talk you through her experiences with the Aspire at Newcastle College.
Thank you, Rob. Afternoon, everyone. As it's already been explained, my name is Helen Harpin, and I am the library coordinator at Newcastle College. I have worked at Newcastle College for 6 years and been a library coordinator for the last 3 years. And as part of my team, I oversee lead librarians who specialise in acquisition, systems, and the student experience, and also oversee our wonderful library and IT assistants, who are the front-facing staff, who are the ones who come and sit on the desk, who support the students on a day-to-day basis. So I have a wonderful team, and a welcome from a very rainy Newcastle this afternoon. So next slide, please, Rob. So if you weren't familiar with Newcastle College, we are part of Newcastle College Group, which is NCG, which includes 7 colleges, and they are quite widespread around the country. So you have Carlisle, Kidderminster, Lewisham, Newcastle Sixth Form, Southwark, and West Lancs College. So kind of spread like east-west, north-south. Obviously, we're the most northern, but we'll have a bit of a widespread of all the students and staff that work for NCG. And we obviously have our values, and these are represented in all the staff and students here. So we are committed to being inclusive and diverse. We are trusting and respecting our communities. We also take ownership whilst working collaboratively, and we try our best to inspire excellence and curiosity. Next slide, please, Rob. So Newcastle College itself, obviously, is where I work, and we have lots of different courses on offer. At present, we have over 16,000 students enrolled, mostly across FE, but we also have adults, apprentices, and our HE provision, which is Newcastle College University Centre. Our University Centre has taught degree awarding powers, so our courses are now starting to be taught across the country. Examples at the minute are Manchester and London. So our courses are being taught all around the country, which is quite amazing at the moment. Our site based at the main campus in Newcastle. However, we do have different specialist facilities which accommodate different cohorts of students, including an academy just next to the airport. We have an academy which focuses on renewable and subsea energy. We have the Rail Academy doing a lot of work around civil and rail engineering. We have an automotive academy, as well as a fairly large adult ESOL provision. So as well as having our main site, we also have external sites as well, which is one of the main reasons we looked at getting a reading list software in, because we have students who often don't come onto the main campus themselves because they're based around Newcastle or around the local area. So it's often going to be quite difficult for them to travel to a different site. So we've had to incorporate all the student needs in our sort of decisions around resources, and that's taken into account why we have advocated and been successful in integrating a reading list management system. Next slide, please, Rob. So this is our library. I'm very proud of our library. I'm not even the best photographer in the world, but our library is at the centre of our campus. It's in the middle of all the other buildings, and it's a great location to have, not just in the sunny weather because you get to sit outside and enjoy the sun, but it means we have a central location for all students and staff to access. We have a physical collection of over 20,000 resources. That's primarily books and journals. We also have an archive with past subscriptions, journals, magazines, as well as a really great collection of art and design books, as well as local history. And we also have the college archive as well. But we obviously cater to all the different courses available at the college and university centre, which is pretty much every vocational subject you can think of, from automotive to sport to aviation to culinary arts to art and design. So we have a very widespread student cohort here at the college. Next slide, please, Rob. So this is our library. Obviously, we have a lot of print, as I've mentioned, about 20,000. We also obviously have a lot of online resources and databases as well, primarily to support students who are unable to come to campus, as well as off-site locations. We also have distance learners, as well as apprentices who are working as well as studying. So having resources be accessible and available is really important to us. So we have a large physical collection, but we also have a much larger online collection as well. So we have our library catalogue. We use Koha as our LMS, and we also use Summon as our discovery tool for our e-resources. So we sort of have two search engines, and this is what we wanted to work on in terms of having a one-stop shop in a way where staff and students can access all the resources in one place. And that related on the next slide, which was our reasons for implementing the reading list software. Now, when I came into the role 3 years ago, there was nothing in place in terms of an online software tool at the college. For those librarians on the call who deal with reading lists, the system was very antiquated. Staff would send us a Word document, a PDF even, of resources, and then we would have to do a lot of work around not just looking at what was available in our resources, but then sourcing alternatives or new additions. And it sort of took away the responsibility from curriculum a lot of the time, because they would give us a list, often a list that they'd used for years, and we would have to have those conversations around, are they still viable? Are they still needed? And we run a lot of data here, which influences our decisions around acquisition. And we would often go back and say, well, that book is on your list, but it hasn't been used in the last 6 months. So is it really required to be on the list? So our main driving force behind looking at a software was to really improve our acquisition and resource request procedures. Mostly to try and have equal responsibility around curriculum, around library staff, but also a shared responsibility to provide the best resources possible for the students and staff here. It also meant staff had to become aware of what resources we had, and what you'll be shown is that Talis obviously has an up-to-date in terms of links to your catalogue, which shows how many copies are available, whether it's online, and it's very much what is in your collection at the moment, which was really what was important. It wasn't a list that hadn't been looked at for a few years, it's what's available right now. And our hope, we're kind of in the middle of the process at the moment. We're kind of coming to the middle of our soft launch this year, was to really have greater communication and collaboration between curriculum and library staff. All requests and resources, I feel like the emphasis was on the library team in the past, just to source, to justify. This ideally put more emphasis back on the curriculum. And as I mentioned, a lot of the previous procedures were very old school. Here's a list. That involved having to check the list, check what was available. If it wasn't, look at sourcing new requests, going back to curriculum. So hopefully this has cut out all of that middle work, and staff can look at what's available and make a list from that. As I already mentioned, obviously supporting students who are not able to come on site, which is what's really important as well. Next slide, please, Rob. So I did my homework. I was the one who initially brought the idea to my managers, because we are an FE institution, and obviously that is what we are, an FE establishment. However, we do have an HE provision as well. And it was very much seen as an HE software. But my argument was there's no reason why it can't be used for our FE courses as well. Obviously, with HE and higher education university courses, there's much more of an emphasis on reviewing in terms of reading lists get reviewed every 4 or 5 years and having that up-to-date resource lists. FE historically, often course textbooks are the key sort of text, and there's a little bit of wider reading. I really want to push it to be that there's the same process for FEHE and obviously for us adults and apprentices as well. So I did my homework and I looked at what software and suppliers were out there. And Talis was originally, when it was with Technology from Sage, was the company I chose to go for in terms of advocating for it with my managers. As part of my sort of homework, I looked at what other institutions were using in the local area. So obviously we have Northumbria, Newcastle, Durham, all these big universities around us. And they were also using Talis for their reading list software. So I was able to go and have a look and have a bit of a spy and see how they were using it, whether it was easy to use. So it was really good to sort of see what was possible. The process and information was really clear from the start. When I reached out for initial communication with the supplier originally, it was very much asking us what we needed and what we hoped to achieve from the software. Contact was really quick, it was really regular, and it was really great to have a couple of points of contact who were really responsive to communication, because I had lots of questions, not having overseen a reading list software before. I had lots of questions of how it would work for us here at the college. The support has been amazing, I will say, particularly from David, who has run our implementation. I can't speak any highly of David. Very much around, he has been there from the start, from implementation, all the way through to answering questions now when something comes up in terms of troubleshooting. So our David, who's a senior customer success consultant, has been absolutely amazing. And he's still available now for support, which is great. One of the big kind of benefits for me was the staff had knowledge of libraries and how they ran, because when I was talking about the problems and the issues we face with resources, there was a shared understanding there of what they'd been through in their experience, and there was a lot of reassurance that it wasn't just happening here in our provision. It was very much, it's happened in a lot of provisions, and obviously our goal was to make resource requesting much more straightforward and accessible and works for everybody. Very realistic with timeframes as well. Obviously, because this was a new software for us, we very much had to look at implementation and really be realistic with timescales. So we originally started in 2024, and David was very clear at the start it could take this amount of time. But I said with our provision, it would be much more of a longer timescale because of the way we were choosing to run with it. So they've been very supportive in how we wanted to implement it and the timescales we've been working with. And as I said, I think the confidence in the product and the company is, I can't speak highly enough for the support we've had provided from them. Next slide, please, Rob. So as I mentioned, obviously, when I choose a new software or go for a new supplier, we are also often asked what we hope to achieve with it. What do you want the impact to be? I know it's one of the big Ofsted words, impact. It's very much, for me, it's the benefit of it to the students, the curriculum staff, and the library team. Obviously, I see the library team on a daily basis. I see the problems we encounter with resources, requests, and a lot of uncertainty around what resources we hold. So my main hope is to improve really streamlining acquisition and workflows around resource requests. I don't know how it works in everyone's institutions, but I don't know how many emails and Teams messages fly around from curriculum staff to say, do you have this book on your shelves? And I always reply back going, have you looked at our catalogue? Because if they'd looked, they would know if we had it or not. And then there'd be a conversation of, can you acquire this resource? We hoped it would implement with our LMS and all of our databases, which it does. I wanted something that was clear and easy to use. Anyone who works with students knows any kind of barrier will mean someone will stop trying. And especially with online resources, there's lots of barriers around access, authentication. So I wanted a software that was really easy to use, like click, 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 and you can get what you want. We wanted a lot of support in training, particularly around the support for curriculum staff, whether it be in a new software. We even had a reading list software before here at the College and University Centre. So it was very much a new way of working for a lot of staff here. So I asked for there to be support and every opportunity available and training, which is being offered. Removing barriers around accessibility. Obviously, a lot of online tools now have a lot of accessibility tools. So we wanted to make accessing our reading lists, our resources as easy as possible, especially for navigating the resources, because it's not always easy to come in a library and look at the shelves. It can be quite daunting for a lot of people. So we're hoping if they can see what we've got, it also means they'll come in a bit more and not be as fearful to come and check our shelves. Obviously, I hope the outcome will be an improvement in student experience, that they feel confident in not navigating the library but knowing what resources we have, and also improvement in our data and feedback around resource requests, usage, and also confidence in staff and students in using the library service. Next slide, please, Rob. So this is our timeline. I did try and keep it as concise as possible. I want to give you an idea of sort of each step in when it sort of happened for us. I know at different institutions it's happened a bit quicker, but this has sort of worked well for us. I initially reached out in June 24 and looked at demonstrations, looked at what sort of was available out there, and spoke to the staff originally from Technology from Sage, who were really responsive in showing the software and showing the benefits of it. Then after having approval from November 24, we started with our implementation. So for anyone who works in finance, you've got to jump through a lot of hoops to get suppliers on board and all this sort of stuff. So it's very much getting this set up and getting things moving. And then in December, we met with David, who would be the person who would run through our implementations, sort out training and support. And we're still working with David now. He's delivering training to curriculum for us in a few weeks' time. Then it comes to obviously January to February, setting up all the behind the scenes information, the course lists, the domain names, all that sort of thing. Then in March, we had a kickoff call, which very much kicked off a sort of really the start of the software for us. Everything was set up. We had our website set up. It was easy to sort of look through and then sort of imagine what the process was going to be. We did our first training back in June to the HA team. So we offered training to the HA team who wants to come learn about a new software, and sort of to slowly introduce the idea of how this is going to be a new process for us. Alongside that, running up until August, we had multiple training sessions, often around the different parts of the software. So obviously there is the students and staff side around viewing the software, but there's also requesting resources, there's the review process, there's also data, there's also admin. So we had lots of different sessions, and the team were really open to having as many sessions as we wanted in terms of training. We're always available to jump on a call and do some more training if ever required. So this September, I say this as in this academic year, September, our system was all up and ready to be used. So what it meant was staff could start playing around with it. We did a bit of a soft launch this year, knowing it would be a bit of a changing process to the way things have been done historically here. So we did a bit of a soft launch this year. And then from this August, as in August 26, all our reading lists for HE will be on Talis. So what that means is from September, students who come in from HE will have all their reading lists online. Historically, they've been put into like module guides, which honestly students didn't really read. So we are putting them all online with the supportive curriculum to hopefully mean that they're much more accessible for staff and students. So that's our timeline. As I mentioned, some of our implementations have happened a lot quicker, but this is what worked for us. And I was very appreciative of the support at each step along the way, and the understanding that some places just take a little bit more time because obviously a lot of this relies on engagement with curriculum, and having that engagement is really what's vitally important for us, especially when you're starting something new. Next slide, please, Rob. So you've seen what we've done so far. So that was a bit of a timeline. But in terms of the technical bits, we set up the tendency and implementation. So a lot of work with IT, a lot of work with the staff at Technology Farm Stage and now Cortex to set up everything that is in the background needs doing. Our website is set up, and I'll show you that in a few moments. We import our course lists with the support from David, showing me how to do it. But it means every year the lists can roll over, and it just means that the lists can carry on next year unless they need changing. We've done some testing, we've created some practice lists. I've got the team creating their own lists, a bit of a practice, because for me what's really important is the staff having confidence to be able to demonstrate this to students as well, because they're the staff who will be asked the questions on the desk especially. We've had lots of training, especially around the more admin side for the library team, and obviously curriculum training is upcoming, but we've already had some. And really positive start is that curriculum has started making lists for us as well, which is really great. So they're kind of our guinea pigs, at least at the moment, from the start of this year, but from next year it'll be the sort of mandatory way of having a reading list. It's going to be all beyond Talis for all our courses. Next slide, please, Rob. So this is what our website looks like, as you can see. Very clear, very simple. David, who worked with us, was very supportive in setting it out the way we wanted it set up. As you can see, you've got a very straightforward layout. We've got all our links on the bottom. This is all we can all support for the admin of this. We can change links and everything. And very importantly, we hope it's identifiable that it's Newcastle College and this is our reading list software. It's all linked, it's all in one place. Next slide, please, Rob. So I have been having a bit of a play around. So this is my example. I'm doing some examples of good practice lists for HA staff for this year, so they can look at what I would say is a good example of what a reading list would look like. It's not perfect because I'm not finished. However, I thought I would show you an example of what it could look like. So as you can see there, it's very visual, it's very clear, and you can make edits to any part of the website. So you can bookmark resources, add them in, you can put paragraphs in, you can add descriptions. It's ideally you can choose how you want this to look. And it's very much, for me, it's consistency as well with staff, but hopefully we can set all the parameters around whether it be essential or recommended reading. We can set all that terminology up. If you press the next slide, please, Rob. You will see just a couple of examples of how it works with our LMS. So this is linked to Cohort, which is our LMS, and you can see there it tells you what is available. So the top book, obviously, the author of the Study Skills Handbook by Cottrell, very well known book. You can see it's available online for us, and we also have 6 copies available print in the library, so students can see straight away what we have available, which is really important. You've obviously got all the details there, which is pulled from our mark records. So when we bookmark, it'll pull from your LMS, which is ideal. So you can obviously edit your mark fields and obviously have what information you want displayed. Now, obviously, the bottom book is just one of our print books. As you can see, there's 1 copy available, gives you the jury number. Very clear, straightforward. So for me, very visual as well. It's not just a list of an author date in Harvard referencing format. It's visual. And then students can click available online and it will take them straight to the book. Or if they click 6 copies available, it takes them straight to the catalogue page where I'll give them more information and show them what kind of loan type it is, etc., all those sorts of things. Next one, please, Rob. What's really useful is obviously this is all online. However, you can still export. So this is a very brief example of what exporting as a PDF would look like. So I still love lists, I still love print books, so I would still be that person that printed things off and annotate. So although it's online, you can still print off and have it as a CSV, a PDF, so it's still there. And obviously you can see on the slide what information is given to you, and obviously the QR code there, which students can click and then takes them straight to the list, so it's all accessible. Next slide, please, Rob. So obviously I appreciate not everyone here has HA courses. We obviously are an FA provision. So our hope eventually is that all FA courses will also have their reading lists on here, but also one of the big driving forces from myself and my team was to create our own reading lists. We do a lot of work around promotions and campaigns, especially around global issues, local issues, really trying to educate the students and really develop their wider development. We push a lot around things like budgeting, careers, driving theory, English and maths. So we obviously support all the students, not just academically. So you can see here just a list that one of my team made around dystopian fiction, because we've been looking at creating our own lists. So this is just a list, as you can see, which isn't necessarily an academic list, but a use you could see there for creating lists for fiction, for non-fiction, and obviously you can then have it all be accessible in terms of then clicking to your catalogue and viewing online or what you have available. So although I've spoke a bit about use of HA lists, we are also going to be using it for FA lists and also lists for what we would like to create. What's really beneficial is having the QR code. So you can click that and it takes you straight to the list. You know, obviously students, I don't know about you guys, are never off your phone. So as much as we love a big list like this, it's more accessible to have it as an online link as well. And the QR code would take you straight to that. Next slide, please, Rob. So I've spoke a bit about, obviously, what we've done, where we are in the process at the moment. So what are our plans for the future? Because we're still in this process at the moment. Obviously, we're coming near the end. Implementation's all done. It's very much now getting the software and system up and running and getting the engagement from curriculum. So our hope by the end of August this year is that all HA reading lists are on Talis and they are integrated with our LMS and Discovery. It's a big barrier getting curriculum staff to bookmark from our catalogue. They'll go on Google Books, they'll go on Amazon. We're really trying to get them to use the resources we already have. Ideally as well, having all the core text for FA apprentice layouts on a list as well. That's the next step. Once we get HA sorted, we'll be moving on to getting all the other lists on. A big part for the library team is to really have an efficient acquisition process for new resource requests. Rather than having emails fly around and people dropping into the library, they request resources via Talis. That goes to our acquisition staff. They then work through a list and then can have those conversations with staff. It's all done in a very clear process. As I just showed you, we would also like to create lists for promotions and campaigns. We're really invested in promoting that wider development. So staff really, well, they really love working in libraries anyway, but they really love reading and pushing the benefits of reading. So we're going to be using our reading list software for that as well. And obviously also what's important for me as a manager is improvement in staff confidence. From curriculum, for requesting resources, but also showing students what is a viable resource and what's available for them. People often are afraid to come and ask a silly question in a library, and ideally they can come and view Talis through our reading list and it's there for them and they can see and click on and sort of look at what options there already sort of are. Next slide, please, Rob. So obviously I know success is hard to measure sometimes, but this is how I'll be measuring the success of this software. So ideally having the number of reading lists on the system, so all HA courses, one for each module. Improvement in staff confidence on the system and knowledge of our library resources. So staff aren't messaging me saying, do you have this book? They will know if we have this book or not by looking on the catalogue or looking on Talis. Improvement in student feedback results. Obviously, we are in the middle of the NSS survey at the moment. We also have our internal surveys. So I always love reading the library resource question and seeing what feedback for that. Obviously, the improved student experience. I want students to come in and know what resources we have and to be able to access them online, because searching online can be very difficult and students often find barriers and that makes it more difficult for them to really truly use what resources they want. So for me, it's all in one place. It's all in one website. They can click and link and it's all there for them. Obviously, we're a library, we're still a business. We would like an improvement in the use of resources, both in print and online, and improved awareness of what resources we have online, because there's although we have 16,000 resources, we have available millions online. So it's more around improving the awareness of what is available. And as I mentioned, it's all in one place. We don't have a VLE here at Newcastle College, so we rely on having our catalogue and discovery to have all the resources in one place. And Talis will take that one step further and have both of them in one place. Next slide, please, Rob. So what has our experience been? And obviously it's been now a year and a bit, 18 months. I can't really say anything more about the support we've had. There is a message board, which is really useful. It's a really great way of communicating in terms of putting a message on, getting a response back, having those conversations and keeping track of sort of what's been done, having checklists of what's been achieved and what's still to be achieved. So it's a really visual, and both sides are in plays their part in that, in terms of making sure everyone knows where everyone's up to. Really prompt responses to support. Nothing has been too much. If I've asked for additional training or I've asked a question, there's been the answer as soon as possible. Staff have even said when they're not available, like obviously half term, people have other commitments. They're really great at letting me know when there's not available for questions, but someone will always pick up if it's an urgent query. I've had lots of training because I like to know I'm confident in the software as well. So as I say, any training, there was no big ask. It was very much, what training would you like? When can we organise it for? We had training of it. A lot of hours was via Teams, but there was also an offer to come on site as well and deliver training in person. The staff who we've worked with have been so supportive and knowledgeable, especially around the issues that libraries have. It was really useful having someone's personal experience of what they've went through in the library, especially around working as a librarian, having to deal with resource requests, having to have those local conversations. So it was really a benefit to us to have someone with a personal experience of working in the library, and that's what I really appreciated. And I think the biggest part, which came out right from the start, was the team really wanted to know what our reasons were, why we wanted this software, what was important to us, what our provision was like, what our goals were like. They actually cared enough to sort of say, well, what do you want out of this software? And it really came across that it was all for the benefit of not just obviously our provision, but the students and staff here as well, to make our sort of experience, especially around resources and libraries, a much better experience. So that's what really came across for us. It was very much what matters to you, and then we'll support you however we can do that. And that is my sort of experience and my sort of bit. So I'll hand back over to Rob.
Amazing, thank you, Helen. That was brilliant. I'll take a slight pause there just to see if anyone does have any questions or comments before I go on to a few slides specific to Aspire. We have the chat functionality, we have the Q&A functionality, we have the raise hand functionality as well, I think. So yeah, feel free to add any in that you do have. One thing I was going to ask Helen, I think you probably have told me this before, but there's no VLE, is there? So the students themselves, how are they access the lists? Is it SharePoint essentially that the link is kind of included into?
Yeah, like a lot of establishments, we use Teams primarily for communication, which uses SharePoint. So we don't have a VLE like Canvas or Moodle that other institutions have. So obviously we'll be using Teams to sort of share the links in terms of putting URLs into Teams channels, and then with having the way students can search for their lists, they can obviously directly link to their course or to their module. But it's been a bit of a barrier for us, but it's something that we've had to sort of look at, work with the team around, and sort of come up with the best sort of way forward without having a VLE. So that's how we're going to be doing it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think it's the experience we're finding with a lot of FE institutions that they don't have one. So yeah, that's thanks for explaining that. I think we have a raised hand. I don't know how to unmute them. Johan, hopefully you do.
Sure, give me 2 seconds.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, does the library team, are they the ones that update and keep the reading list consistent, or is there any kind of interaction with faculty staff?
Oh, thank you for your question. So our staff create the reading list. So they create the reading list for each module for their course. The process, obviously, what we do is they then send us the list. We then go through the list and look at what we already have available. Maybe there's some acquisition that needs to happen. So the responsibility really is on the curriculum staff to put forward their list, and the library team make decisions around what's viable, whether it's best as an ebook or a print book, whether it's best as part of a database package or an individual purchase. So the curriculum staff propose their resources. We're really hoping this year to have more concise resource requests rather than having a read list of 200 books, which no one's ever going to read. We're really hoping to push having a much more concise list. And then it comes to us, and part of the reading list software is a review process. So the staff put their reading list on Talis, that then gets reviewed. We then have that conversation back and forth about resources. And at the end of the day, what comes out is a final list of what the library will be able to resource for that course. Depends obviously on restrictions. Obviously, we're all aware of ebook licenses and journal costs. So we do our best to provide what we can. But we're hoping the emphasis will be back on curriculum rather than the library staff, which seems to be at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that, Helen. It's just because I know in my college that faculty would be reticent to do that on their own. They would see that as a change to their terms and conditions and their contracts. So, so you've never had any issue with getting faculty to engage with this process, and it's been a blanket wide thing through the college?
I would say engagement's always a challenge. I would say because we have a lot of vocational courses, a lot of our curriculum staff are not always from teaching backgrounds, for example. So for those people who are in teaching backgrounds, they grow up with research and reading and creating this sort of resource lists. However, a lot of our staff haven't came from that background, so it has been quite difficult. And I wouldn't say we have complete perfect engagement. What we try and do is give staff the confidence and assurances that the resources that they're suggesting are appropriate and viable, and we're here to support them through that. So we do offer workshops, drop-ins. We're always available for staff to come and ask for help. And what we started doing last year was asking if staff wanted to come in and sort of in person and check out the collection and see what there was, and to critique it even to some degree, and to offer, well, that's a bit out of date, can we get anyone one of these? So it's really having that communication, which can be difficult. I'm not saying it's not. It's very much, in my institution, it's very much the curriculum's responsibility to put forward a reading list. Then we have those conversations around what's viable. This year will be more difficult because we're really trying, as I said, keep them more concise. We had a reading list, I think, of 160 books one year, which no student's going to read 160 books on their course, are they? So it's very much making sure what we have is what's suitable. And it often there's difficult conversations around that, but obviously I can't speak for your institution, but in mine, it's very much the curriculum staff should know what resources they're teaching the students and promoting the students. So that's our hope. But we'll have staff who are less confident than others that we have to support through this. That's why we had a bit of a soft launch this year. So we offered it out to staff to create their own lists in their own time and to test out the software. And then in a future time, we're delivering training to the HA staff who are going through validation. And then there's an expectation that all their reading lists will be on by March 30th, and then we can do the background work and checking resources. So it's not going to be easy. Any change is difficult. But for us, the benefits will outweigh the hard work in the meantime. And luckily, we do have the support of the HA team that are here. I have really supportive managers, and we're sort of trying to do a bit of a consistent college-wide approach to this. But I say I'm lucky to have that support, but it took two and a bit years to get to this point.
Thanks, Helen.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I think thank you for that question. That's it's always something that comes up, I think, under the kind of broad umbrella of, let's say, academic engagement. It's, different institutions do it in different ways, and we probably talk at Talis a bit about the kind of the carrot versus the stick, and some institutions very much going down the stick route, where it's kind of mandated that they have to do it and they have to put their reading list onto Talis. I don't always think that's the best approach. I think there is a lot to be said for the other approach, being the carrot, in terms of the benefits both for them, in that if their list is on Talis, then the library is going to have much more sight of that list, or better sight of that list. So the students are therefore likely to have access to the resources that the academics want them to be reading or looking at. So that's a big part of it. But also the kind of student experience side of things. So it's obviously coming into education a lot more, as it should. So selling it to the academics from that point of view, and say, like, it's a much better experience for the students if they have one list and one place where they can see everything they need to read for that course. I did drop a link into the chat, which is a link to a webinar that we ran, I think maybe last week. It was quite recently. And that basically is a research project that Leeds Beckett did on student and academic engagement it was with Talis Aspire, but even broader to reading lists in general. It was probably one of our most well-attended webinars that we've kind of ever run, I think. I think we had over 200 people or so registered for it, and quite a few attend as well. So yeah, it's a really, really good kind of practical case study from an institution about how they actually get the academics to engage with Talis Aspire. Yes, it is a new piece of software to academics. We understand that. We try to make it as easy as possible for them. You try not to make it too complicated in terms of creating a list. And ultimately, once it's there, it's one of those things that, yes, they may want to review it year on year, update some resources on there, but ultimately, the bulk of what they kind of supply in the first instance, the bulk of what they put up there in the first instance, isn't likely to change too much year on year. So then it just becomes a kind of a reviewing process from that point on. So maybe the initial kind of outlay takes a little bit of time, but it's not intended from that point to then take them lots and lots of time every year. They don't have to recreate. We're not doing it again every year. It's just sort of tweaks and things like that. Okay, before I go on, I've got some slides about Aspire, but I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure there's enough time for questions. So I'll kind of whiz through them a little bit. But if anyone does have any more questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, or indeed put your hand up, and then Ryan, if you can just give me a nod if anyone puts their hand up, that would be great. Awesome. So yeah, just talking specifically about Aspire. Obviously the three, I talked about this a bit at the start, but the three kind of areas that we serve, obviously being the library, the students, and the faculty, and there are different kind of ways in which we serve them, and different things we have to do to be able to kind of keep each group happy. What we initially talk about when we tend to talk about Aspire is we initially talk about the student experience, because we believe that is the kind of, ultimately the bulk of the users of Aspire should be the students. It should be used most by the students. They're using it a slightly different way to everyone else, but they should be providing most of the kind of the usage of the platform. So from a student point of view, for them, it's obviously a great benefit. So they know that they're starting their kind of research in a good place, because they're using the list that's curated by their tutor. So it gives them confidence in kind of what it is they're looking at. And particularly if you start to then talk about kind of importances, which Helen talked about a little bit. So, each item on a list, most institutions would say each item on the list should have an important set onto that, whether that be kind of recommended or essential. So the students kind of beginning to understand, okay, these are the things I have to read, these are the things that may be important but aren't as important for me to read necessarily. That kind of thing is really, really important for the student. Couple of points I brought out from kind of Helen's presentation there. So in terms of the reasons for implementing, so the improved awareness of the resources by students, which hopefully obviously Talis Aspire would do, and then support, obviously thinking about off-site students, distance learners, things like that. Aspire really helps with that. removing barriers around accessibility, and generally improving the student experience. So what does it look like for students? This view itself is actually taken kind of from a VLE, but essentially it's just a kind of plug-in or Aspire, so it doesn't really matter. It looks exactly the same for a student, just without this bit around the outside, and which the VLE is providing. But the student, sees very simply a list of resources that they need to look at for this course. The student can then do things like set reading intentions if they want to. When we kind of released this functionality, we weren't entirely sure how much it would be used. We are pleased to say it actually is used quite a lot by students. So they like to kind of mark things up of, have read, will read, that kind of thing, which they can do within Aspire. And they can also do some filtering as well. So if they're the kind of student who learns better through reading physical copies, physical books, they can filter to those. If they prefer online resources, if they filter the ones, all the readings that are absolutely essential for this module, that kind of thing. So we kind of give them ways to interact with the list to hopefully help and improve their experience. For the faculty, obviously the main benefit for them is that the list itself or Talis itself will integrate directly with the library catalogue, so they can see what it is the library has. And obviously, if they can put something on their list that the library has, it's much more likely that the student is going to read it because they're going to have access to it. And it makes the content obviously more accessible for the students, and hopefully makes their experience better as well. I will kind of whiz through these a little bit in terms of creating lists. So creating lists isn't supposed to be a kind of complicated process for the academic. We do recommend they download the Talis Aspire bookmarking extension. It's the kind of easiest way to do that, to create lists. And then basically they just, whenever they're on a page with a resource that they want to add, so they're on a journal article page, they're on a book chapter page, whatever it might be, they just click the extension, and a very kind of simple kind of pop-up will pre-populate with all of the metadata that we can find from that page. So we kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for them in terms of the how they actually get things into their own kind of bookmarking area. Once they've got all those bookmarks, they go to obviously to Aspire, they create the list, they give it a name, they give it a description, and then they basically start adding bookmarked items to the reading list. And then the list itself kind of talks them through, other things they can do. So they can add sections, which we would recommend them to do, because it does make it easier for the students to kind of visualize what they should be doing week on week, for example. They can add notes, and those notes can appear, and they can be student-only notes. They can be not what student-only notes, but visible to everyone notes. And they can be notes that are specific to the library. So they may want to add a note to say, I don't know, this resource is new, can we buy some copies, or something like that. And then there are options for draft lists versus published lists. So they can kind of go away, create draft lists, come back to them at a later date. They don't have to do it all in one go. In terms of the tips, you can create draft lists and use them as a template, and then you can just copy that each time. So you want to kind of a rough template of what a list might look like, and then just copy that, and it gives you a bit of a starting point. If you're teaching similar models of things like similar modules, similar other modules that you can kind of copy that list across from. I've linked to the bottom there to a YouTube video. So you've got that's the one I linked to in the chat actually. So that's talking about academic and student engagement from Leeds Beckett. So yeah, really worth a watch. I will make sure that all these slides, I'm going to kind of create a PDF from these slides, and then we'll make sure they go out with the recording at the end of the webinar. And then, yeah, from the librarian point of view, well, what's the benefit here? Obviously, we've talked a lot about kind of the reviews area, acquisitions, that kind of thing. Really, it's giving the library sight of what the academics are telling the students they need to read. We hear a lot, it's really common for us to hear from librarians who say, the first sight I get of a reading list is when a student comes into a library and goes, have you got this resource? And you go, no, we don't. Why do you need it? And they hand over this paper list that they've been given, and the library has had no sight of that list until that point. That is incredibly common. For the library to obviously know what it is they need to be purchasing, they need to be able to see the lists. So this is the kind of, the benefit for the librarians, certainly. I don't have time at all to go through kind of reviews and how that works, because that's a huge bulk of kind of area that needs a webinar in itself, and does have one. But essentially all of that data in terms of everything that is put onto the list by academic goes into a kind of, let's call it, a special areas for librarians to look at, which is the reviews area. And that is when librarians can look at particular kind of content, and then they can see what, really relevant information that kind of feeds into their purchasing decisions about the importances that have been attached to that particular item, whether there's other editions available, what the student numbers are on that course, but also what the students' numbers are on other courses where that item might also be on, which is obviously a really important thing. If we're talking about the study skills handbook, for example, which we talked about earlier, it may well be in quite a few lists, so you need to know the total number of students who may need access to that. Library notes, whether the notes have changed, whether there's a student note, that kind of thing all feeds into the reviews area. So obviously the librarians and obviously you guys can make really kind of informed acquisition decisions based on what is on lists. I won't kind of dwell too much more on reviews. There is a link to a webinar we have done on reviews before. It's about an hour solely on reviews, because there's lots and lots in them. I will skip to the last slide, just so you can see Helen and I's contact details, because we've only got about 3 minutes left and I want to make sure there is time for questions. But obviously, if you do have any questions in follow-up, then obviously, yeah, feel free to reach out to Helen if you've got specific questions about their experience with Talis Aspire, or if you've got kind of Talis Aspire specific questions, then do reach out to me. But yeah, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to put your hand up, pop something in the chat, pop something in the Q&A. We've got a couple of minutes left and hopefully we can answer them.
As the questions come in, I just wanted to add that, as I mentioned previously, we'll be sending a recording of this session over email, and also we'll send these slides attached to that email so you can go through them.
Yeah, so there's two webinar links within there, one on academic engagement webinar and then one on a reviews webinar. So feel free to watch those as well if you want to.
I can see Helen is typing, so let's wait and see. Oh, thank you, Helen.
Thanks, coming to you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we got 1 minute. We'll stay until 5:30 just for last minute questions. Otherwise, yeah, thank you everyone for coming to the session.
Yeah, thank you, Helen, as well. It was really enjoyed that presentation there. Thank you.
No, I'm available if anyone has any questions after the session. Please just send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions about our experiences.